Keith. So, all right, I'm going to give it 2 minutes to see if we get Gargi and Linda in time. Otherwise, we will start.
Okay.
We're not going to do any business at this point till It'd be one thing if they were late in person, but being late technologically, I feel a little different about. So. Okay. That's what that is. All right. I have it at 7:02, July 27th, 2022. I call this meeting of the Historic Landmark Board of the City of Westminster to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Gargi, Tukupka, Linda Graybiel, Karen Hardy.
Here.
Sarah Lorek.
Here.
Alana Mace. She was just here.
Waved.
Oh, she's muted. Oh. Mary Oswald.
Here.
Keith Teeter.
Here.
And Tennille Wood.
Here.
You have quorum.
I was going to say, so for the purposes of this, I call it, oh, looks like Gargi is about to drop in.
Oh, good.
Okay. While we wait for Gargi to drop in, literally, did anybody see anything in the minutes that might need to be changed?
I have a question for clarification. I noticed that I apparently made a commitment to create the letter to the school for the Union High School, except I didn't put anything in my notes in April. And so I totally spaced it out. And in the interim, I fractured my wrist. So I can only write in small amounts and type in small amounts slowly. So I would need some time to work around that if that was for real. And I didn't totally, and I totally just spaced it out, for which I apologize.
I think the idea was that we were going to do that. So I don't think for the purposes of minutes, it's crazy that we didn't get around to it. And there are some other developments that will affect that later in the meeting. So,
So I have a reprieve.
Yes, you have a reprieve. Kate, you got that Gargi is now with us for roll call purposes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So with Karen's with the understanding that we didn't quite get all the things we thought we were going to get done. If there are no other changes to the minutes, I would accept a motion to approve them.
So move.
And was that you, Karen?
Yes, it was.
A second.
Thank you, Tennille. If everybody's sorry. Everybody in favor of accepting the minutes as stated, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
That looks like a unanimous of those present, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
So the first piece of new business is the dedication of the Vicki Bunsen Sculpture Garden and Fred Valenti Humanitarian Park. Great.
Just really quick, we wanted to invite all of the board members to the dedication ceremony. It will be held on Saturday, August 13th at 1:30. We'll be unveiling the new signs, and then we'll also be doing a reception for the new sculptures that are being installed. So, and just you can email me if you're planning to attend, and we can get you some lunch as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
So there's going to be lunch served at this event?
Basically what we're going to do is give you a voucher to one of the food trucks. So no, we're not going to have food at the event, but rather supporting the Around the World Street Fair businesses that are going to be there.
Alana,
It should be good.
we're not hearing you. Are you muted? Is Alana muted?
Let me go back and see. She doesn't appear to be muted.
We're not hearing you, Alana. I don't know why.
Can't hear you.
You can type it if you want to. If there's a question, you can always type it into the organizers and panelists. And if you have a question and we can't hear you, we can receive it. Okay. If that's that, then on to goals and work plan, which it's sort of brought into one document for us.
And I sent it via email just a few minutes ago as well. And I can, if you want, I can share my screen.
So did people get a chance to look at this document at all? Yes, no? My reading of it is these are the things that we both talked about in the goal setting and brought forward from previous years and sort of solidified toward what we want to have achieved this year. They are goals. We want the action items, those goals, knowing that we will not get through every action item or to the end of every goal.
Kate, would you be able to share your screen, Kate?
Yes, I think I can do that. Let me see. Actually, well, let me see.
I have it in front of me. I just wasn't sure. Mary, if you were going to go through the goals one by one or anything like that.
Me too, I will. So that's, so the way we stand is number one, increased opportunities for presentation of historical assets to the Westminster community. That's cool. And I'm assuming A and B are sort of action steps to that effect, Kate, correct?
Yes, I'm trying to, sorry, just trying to figure out how to share my screen.
So A says to continue to offer history tours as a way to educate the community about historical assets and to increase community connection with historical assets. So that's a continuation of these, maybe not exactly the same form, but this idea. And the second action item on that is to use a variety of formats to present the information about historical assets, sorry.
Yes.
So digital, print, physical signage, to continue to work toward having the assets, especially those that are landmarked by us, be more widely known as that, as well as getting historic information about those items out there. Okay? Shall I move on? The second goal is to organize historic land for information to enhance utilization of historic assets. The first action item is clearly distinguish between city designated landmarks, state designated landmarks, and nationally designated landmarks. My question to that is that internally or externally from the board itself? When you talk about clearly distinguishing. We're talking about in the information we provide or to us as board members.
I understood that to be the information that's provided on the website.
Okay, so that keeping up that
Mhm.
the messiness a little bit of what's designated by us versus the state and nationally. Okay.
Right, and you and I had talked about that there's just some ways that we can tweak the website, and and those tweaks are in the queue, so hopefully those will get done here pretty quick.
Okay. And to that end, I can explain a little bit. The idea would be that when you get to the website that discusses historic landmark sites, there's a way to make sure that we are informing people what we have locally designated and what also has these other special designations. And so that they're all historic assets locally, but we as the landmark board, I want to make sure that when we're talking about what we've done, we make that specific to what we've landmarked. But it's not, we are, at least in the way I read are the rules for our existence, although those other designations are nice, it also matters that we have made those things landmark. Is that, okay. The second action item in that is to continue to consistently implement the historic marker program to enhance community connection of historic assets. Trying to make sure that we, especially when we're talking about city-owned properties, that eventually the signage reflects that those are landmarked properties by the city. And then the final one is to identify opportunities to enhance awareness and use of those assets. So swinging back around to making sure that we are taking that information and getting to the public. So, oh, Gargi, was that? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if that was a question or not. And then third goal would be to identify historic landmark opportunities. So to continue to try to find places that should be landmarked, might be interested in being landmarked. And the final one would be develop the partnerships to protect and enhance landmarks. Those two kind of go together to some degree. One of the things that I went back and looked at our criteria for designation for historic landmarks. And one of the things that our founding documents cite is that any site listed on the state or national register shall be deemed to qualify for local designation, but is not designated until they file a request. And back to Karen's discussion about letter writing, now that I've confirmed or found that, I think the letter we write to the school district would be very simple, because Union High and, for example, Union High and the school building at 72nd, they are both nationally and state landmarked. For us to ask the school district to fill out the paperwork, I do not think would be too big a challenge. And from, so that's part of this goal, this idea of identifying landmark opportunities. That would be, a very easy early one to get done. So is this the document you sent to council, Kate?
We had to turn it into the city clerk by the end of June. So yeah, this is what what she received, or yes, the end of June.
Okay. And as far as I can tell, these feel like straightforward things we've already talked that we are doing, but they're now written down on paper. And such time as we meet again to talk about whether we've achieved any of them or whether they continue to be our goals, it'll be a little easier to have a piece of paper with them written that we've all seen, to be honest. So if there's any other questions or conversation, feel free to. Anybody? Okay. So we're all on the same page then, obviously. So the third thing under new business is the historic designation of Union High School. And to that end also, I see no reason why we would not include the school at 72nd, on 72nd, because they are both nationally and state designated as landmarks. So I would assume we can write a letter from the point of view as of, you already have these other designations, but for the city purposes, we would love it if you would fill out the paperwork so we could rubber stamp you. If they're, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I suspect both the national and state designations are at least as stringent as the cities, although Gargi and Karen could probably speak to that more than I. But I think that'll make writing that letter even easier, because we will be asking them basically to fill in a blank piece of paper that we will eventually be able to agree to because it's in our documents. So does that meet with everybody's approval? Okay. There are a couple of other state and local designated properties that we think once we've done these couple of easy ones, there's at least one of those that will probably also be fairly simple to do, but we figured we'd set them up as dominoes and do one at a time. So Kate and I, and if Karen is also interested, I will be happy to work on verbiage with Kate and get Karen involved, because she probably understands the correct historic language a little better than I do. But I think the school district is the best first people to go to, especially if we're basically saying, look, just fill out our paperwork and sign it and we'll make you a landmark.
So you'd still have to go through the council process.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm talking about,
But yeah,
they
that's
don't have any new information for us. They don't have to prove themselves worthy to us, except in paper form. So, and I hadn't realized that. So I heard, oh, yes, Karen?
So I think it would be helpful, in addition to our letter, to provide them with copies of the national and state register nominations. I mean, because we don't know that they have copies handy.
That's true. I will have to.
The copy of our landmark nomination form, landmark application form, to make it as easy as possible for them. So they can, as you say, just basically extrapolate from the other two into our form.
Yes, I was also going to suggest maybe just in a simple format, what is the process? Even if it seems like a slam dunk to us, it's easy if it's explained in the letter. We are attaching the two nominations. Here's the form you have to fill out. What you have to do is fill out the form. It goes to council, it does A, B, C, and this is how it gets nominated. So you give it to them in their hand, and then it's really easy for them.
They really have to just file the paperwork and have council agree to it.
So our landmark board would need to officially recommend that they be locally designated. Right. And so for that recommendation to the city council then.
And so as I said, I think the more we can give them that makes it easy for them, the better. Pulling that stuff together. But if we could get that so that by the time we get to our next meeting, we are ready to do that, or maybe even to the point of pulling it all together and ready to get that off. This is the first time that I've been able to see where we've taken advantage of this part of our criteria to, for lack of a better phrase, go after somebody to have themselves landmarked. But the people who created the verbiage for us clearly understood that that puts us in a good position to add landmarks easily, I guess is the best way I can think of. And this also makes it easier for us to ask them, because it puts us in a position of saying, well, you've already got all these ducks in a row. It would be really great if we could have you and you don't have to do anything special for that. Okay?
Let them know it would be painless.
Yes.
So
And
the school at 72nd and Lowell, is that officially called Pleasant to Spain School now?
that's why I call it the school at 72nd and Lowell, because nobody can make up their mind.
Well, somebody needs to do that.
Well, I think one of the things that needs to be done, and I don't have a connection to the Westminster School District, it is their building, and we need to find out what because they use it. That's where the History Center is, and so we're there a lot, but the sign that used to be on the building went away. And the thing about the name of that school is that I believe they gave that name to the school as an honorific, but it's confusing because Pleasant to Spain had nothing to do with that building in reality. And so I don't know why the name came down, but I do know that it's not there anymore. So,
Well, we should see what name it has in the state register and national register nomination.
yes. And I think that may not be the name that it's being called at the moment, but yes, we can look into that. But yes. So does anybody else have any burning questions about that? I think that's all the new, yeah, I'm pretty sure that is. The other thing with respect to our goals, and this is old business as well, Kate and I have worked on taking the existing landmarks and numbering them, and we have that portion of the paperwork done. The final part of that is to take our criteria and annotate that to that list, so that when we as a board get a list, it says, historic landmark number 1 is the Bowles house, and this is where it is, and here are the reasons it got this designation. Most of them are general historic, but a few of them have a little bit more specifics, and so that's where that document is now. It's 3/4 of the way done. So I plan that we will have it by the next meeting. It'll also allow us, when we talk to the city, to talk about getting those numbers on the actual landmarks themselves when signage gets changed. I just wanted to let you guys know where we are. The list is done, but I want to add the designation reasons, because then we as a board know, oh, this is historic, or we've talked about the rodeo market. These elements of architecture are what make it special, or all of those kind of things. So I think.
So I have a quick question on the on reaching out to the school district. I'm curious, is that something that we can provide them maybe with just the copy of the process really quick, just so that we can get the conversation going and then kind of follow up with them? Do you know what I mean?
I would think so. I suspect the first thing somebody has to do, and it may end up being me, is calling and finding out where into the district we have to contact to start this process.
Okay, because I thought in our notes, is that Dr. Duffy?
Well, but I don't know that we're going to start at the top, because I'm not sure that's why I said I think we need to have an actual conversation with the district and find out where they need that letter to go, because I know that it starts at the top. It may have to work its way there. And the one that's probably the most helpful in that is Linda, and she's not here, so we may have to get back in touch with her.
Okay.
Because it also would help if we could connect with the person we're sending the letter to first, so they know it's coming, And school districts can be kind of opaque, especially to someone who's never had a child in the school district. So I'd like to make sure this letter goes somewhere that it gets acted on. And as I said, I think Linda Grabio might be the best person to help us make that choice. Yes, Karen?
If Linda doesn't have an idea, I had occasion to, in a totally different context, contact a different school district absolutely cold because we wanted them to be a speaker. And so the person who answered the phone was at the general number was the assistant to the superintendent. And it turns out she was the right person to contact because she knew, who to talk to about what and how to set things up and arranged all the details.
Okay. All right. If we are ready, we can move on to the consideration of old business, the summer tour updates.
So the tours have been going well. We sold out the first one and we had pretty good attendance at the second, and we currently have 14 tickets sold for the tour on the 13th. So if you know anybody who wants to come, that would be great. We're doing quite a bit of social media around it. So Linda and I are working on some fun facts and things to know. So our next tour goes to Church Ranch with a stop at the History Center and historic homes along Lowell. And then the last tour will be in September 10th. And that one will be Metzger Savory Mushroom Farm, Metzger Open Space, and the Wesley Chapel. And that one will actually start and end at City Hall. So the August 13th tour coincides with the Around the World Street Fair. So there's a lot going on that day. So we'll have the street fair, the dedication of the Fred Valenti Park, the Vicki Bunsen Sculpture Garden, the sculptures. So a lot going on.
Excellent.
Yeah, but people have been really happy with them. They really, really enjoyed being in the Bowles house. They really liked that. So I think that's really something that can be played up. But they really like being able to go in the buildings and sort of feel the history of the sites.
Of the tour that's coming up, you said that there were 13. How many empty spaces does that?
14. That leaves 8 empty spaces. We have room for 22.
Okay. And then we don't know yet about the September. We don't have numbers yet on the September tour.
I know that we've sold some tickets. I want to say it's around 10. I didn't check that one for tonight.
And the other question I have is, what follow-up are we doing with the people who do attend in terms of capturing contact information, email addresses, those kind of things?
Yeah, we have we have all of that data. We also send them follow-up email with a coupon that they can use for future tours. So yeah, and we also do surveys. So we're getting some good information. Mostly it's just accolades. Well, other than our little fiasco with the air conditioning, which everybody understood was not our fault.
With respect to that, will we have some information about that compiled by the time we have our October meeting? Like, we had this many spaces, we had this many people, they liked this, they didn't like that. I'm not asking totally granular stuff, but it'd be nice if we could have a report on that by the October meeting.
Sure, that'd be great. That'd be a really good summary. I was kind of wondering how to get that information to you, because I look at it and I've tallied it all up. I'm like, it needs to go to somebody. So yeah, that would be really good. And then just some of the comments. There's been some nice ideas for future tours and some ideas there. So I can include that as well.
Excellent. And speaking of which, when they go to Metzger, this is just an aside, they're going to be able to get in on the property, correct? They're going to open the gate so people can get into Metzger, or are we only going to be in the exterior portions?
That I'm not sure. So I'll have to do some more work with Linda and you and Rich as to the actual, the narrative and the logistics.
I'm just curious about that, because I like through the park there. Okay. If we are, oh, Karen?
I had a question regarding the survey. Are you collecting any kind of demographic information, you know, ages or ethnicities of the people who've attended the tours?
We didn't ask actual questions about that. We asked more neighborhood type questions, like where, you know, spatially where you live. I can, since I've been there anecdotally, I can tell you sort of the mix. We have had some new residents attend. It tends to be some of our older residents here in Westminster that do come. They tend to be very passionate about history and historical preservation, but we are seeing some younger folks attend as well. But the vast majority are older folks. But that's good. It's still very interesting, and really, again, the Bulls House was like really, people just raved about that. So I think there's definitely that opportunity to do that more. Sorry.
So I was just thinking, because one of our goals is to continue this, if we have the survey highlights and points, like how we can improve things, I think that might help with that whole continuation as well, because we want to make it better. This is the first time we're doing it. How this worked, maybe we need to tweak some things, maybe we don't. Again, whatever you have, that information might help. And is there a different type of audience we can pull in? Because after a while, you know, there are only so many places. Are you going to have the same group of people go on these tours every year? You may not. So how do you do that? You know, that might give us some ideas.
Anecdotally, I know that we had somebody come in to the History Center, this is a little while back, but they were kind of fascinated by the history of the Stanley Lake Dam and what was there before. And so this is obviously not going to fit into this year's set of tours, but there might be people who would be interested in having, say, a civil engineer talk about when and how the build, you know, those kind of things. So going forward, if there are people that are like, I'm passionate about X, you might be able to mix that into some of the stuff that we do in the future. So yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, there's definitely some opportunities to do some, like, there's some interest out there, at least in the people that we surveyed, in doing kind of those workshop style ones. Yeah. So I think a mix would be very interesting.
One of the future thoughts was, again, because we are talking about trying to get the school district landmarked, one of the future thoughts might be to, from the city, try to approach some of the elementary schools, because where you're going with this is there is an educational component to it, and schools always take kids on field trips.
Yeah. Oops.
All right. If that's that, then other business. Do we have any the meeting? Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. So meeting format. I know that probably a year ago we discussed the virtual, hybrid, in-person, and our thoughts were that going forward, if we didn't have to have a public meeting, if we were having a small kind of meeting, that this virtual is a good safe thing. I know that we also like the idea of getting together, and it builds a different kind of camaraderie. And so I kind of hope that we will be able to do that more through the end of this year and into next year. But we wanted to make sure that everybody sort of continued to feel that same way about stuff. If anybody has statements they want to make or questions they want to make about that, I'd be happy. You know, the hard part I think for us would be to try to do hybrid, at least from what Kate told me. But one or the other is probably not too difficult. And if we get to the point where somebody comes to us and wants to landmark something, then I think we need to try to be in person whenever possible.
We are meeting only 4 times a year, so I think there's some value to meeting in person. But I'll also, on the flip side, tell you the advantages when they are in person. So often, I ended up when they were in person missing some of them that I planned to attend only because of my drive and where I'm coming from, if I'm on site, running late at work. And when it's virtual, I have been without fail able to attend it. That is something that for me personally has actually, even though I don't like a complete virtual world, it has worked better when I was looking back on the last 8-9 years. Just a thought. I'm not sure how everyone else feels. Maybe your schedules are a little bit more non-erratic, if you will. Mine can be a little erratic.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and it certainly is efficient to do our business meetings like this one virtually. You know, it's just a time saver, and we don't have to worry about the weather and so forth. But if we are having a public hearing, you know, that's makes it a little more necessary to meet in person, I think.
Keith?
Yeah, I agree with those points. I want to point out that I'm currently in a hotel room in Boston and would not have been present if we weren't meeting virtually. So it is helpful to have that flexibility so that I don't miss one of the 4 meetings of the year. But I also agree that if we do need to have a public meeting, that absolutely should be in person so that we can have that face-to-face.
Anybody else?
I agree. I like virtual. I am on Zoom calls all day anyways, but it's nice if I'm traveling or anything to be able to just hop on a Zoom call. So
I think going forward, this is the better way. Although yes, I'd love to get back in person. But this is the way I would look at it. Short of having to be in person for a public meeting, I think it's nice to be able to meet at least once a year. If that turns out to be the onboarding and that's sort of our 5th meeting, it's not a terrible thing. And I do appreciate that people can, I mean, I had one of these meetings that I almost had from California as well. And I do understand that. And the hardest part of the public meetings with this format is everybody gets to be there and then they speak and you have to go back and forth, and that is harder on the public. So I definitely think that when possible, we should do those meetings in person. So to that end, I suspect then our October meeting will be virtual, but that could change if something were to come up and I don't know, somebody decided they wanted the rodeo market back and we had to meet with them about that again or something to that effect.
Or you get Union School finally designated.
We'll see if we could get to that point. If we move that
would
fast,
be awesome.
That's lightning fast for this tour.
And you guys can do it. I have faith in you.
So I do have a question. When we have something on our public agenda, what is your timeline for understanding if you're going to have something that public may come to? Obviously, they can come to anything, but you have timelines on when they have to, if there's a special item that on the agenda that we didn't talk about. Because we want to also be a little structured in terms of deciding. We need to have, if you're going to have a meeting today, when do we decide what's our cutoff date for deciding if it's going to need to be in person? Yes, we can keep a default of hybrid, virtual, but we also need to allow all the board members to be able to plan for that, you know? That's just a question.
I believe there is a set amount of time that we have to publicize things. And I don't remember off the top of my head if that's
2 weeks. 2 weeks, I'm sorry. So,
Okay.
but we try to get it out earlier. So you could post it earlier if you guys could make that decision. If the planets aligned and the union school was ready in mid-September, you could all talk via email as to how you want to meet.
I think that's the bare minimum of deciding to be in person. Would be 2 weeks. I'd like it to be closer to a month that we know, but it also might depend on, like you said, what it is that's coming up that we need to be there for. So, but yes, I cannot imagine that we would call for a public in-person meeting, especially with that 2-week window. We have to tell people where we're going to be. That's the drop dead date to telling them whether we're going to be virtual or in person. So yeah, I think, and we're a little bit going to have to play this by ear. I think we have a pretty good idea now, especially folks like with Keith being away. I would want him to know further than 2 weeks in advance, because if he, you know, the more board members at those meetings, the better, because all the perspectives are important. As we've come to find out in those meetings, it can matter that somebody has a perspective that the rest of us don't see.
Well, and we have to make sure that we're going to be able to have a quorum. So we need to advance that more than 2 weeks ahead of time to make sure that we actually can be there for a public meeting.
So I think going forward, that's the way I would look at it, Gargi, if that makes sense to you. But I would hope that we would have 30 days to be able to say they want to be there and we want to be in person, and it looks like we can. As I said, I think that, does that seem like a reasonable thing?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always done default understanding everything was in person, and that's when things start to go haywire, because you're lucky if you actually know. Sometimes things come up and you have to just rush around. Sometimes that is tough. The 2 weeks is great, I think.
In that regard, I have a question for Kate. Is the city able to technologically do a hybrid meeting? I don't know if for instance, when city council meets, if a quorum of city councilors, if some of them have to be elsewhere, that they can actually do a hybrid meeting, or is that not acceptable at all?
That I would have to do some research. And then just to reiterate, I mean, we have to follow all of the noticing and the sunshine laws and coordinate with council's calendar. So I would have to, let me check on the hybrid logistics, and like, I'll just email you back about that. I don't know that one. I haven't had to deal with your board yet in a hybrid manner. It was stressful enough just turning this one on tonight. So
So I will just speak to it because of the last 2 years. I know our legislative sessions for the state, they had to figure out a way of doing it hybrid. I would be very surprised if most city councils haven't had to figure that out in the council, you know, because that's where all the public stuff happens.
right.
I'm fairly sure what you'll find out is they have the capacity. We just haven't had to use it. They've
Exactly
had to use it.
And for us, we would have to make sure that we fit within the calendar. So tonight would not have worked because they're doing the common consumption hearing, and that they're using the council chambers for that. So yeah, it would have to definitely fit within that schedule. And then besides my limited technology, you know, skills. So
That's one of the joys, right? You can ask your IT person, whoever Rich used to work with. That's one of the good things.
yeah.
They have
Well,
those things.
right. I'm like, I'm like you, Sarah. I'm more familiar with Zoom, so I'm still trying to figure out how to share my screen. So anyway, my apologies.
That gets us to the meeting schedule for the remainder of the year, which is October 26th. I don't, at this point, I assume we will meet, it'll be a virtual meeting, but we will find out as things go forward. I will try to get on the letter to the school district so we can figure out early whether that's going to be a possibility or whether it's going to push to 2023. But beyond that, and at that point, finding out how the tours did, what we think we can do differently as we go forward. That's mostly internal business to the board, so I think we can do that virtually. And at this point, I don't have anything else to add. Oh, I forgot. Were there any, I missed conferences, education, other updates. My bad. Was there anything like that out there? Conferences, education update? I guess not. Well, unless there is any other business, then.
Well, Mary and Kate, I guess maybe the three of us can share emails about coordinating on the letter writing then.
Yes,
Yep.
I think that's the way to start. If we get to the point of writing a letter, I do think it's something that everybody on the board should have a chance to see at that point, to make sure we're making our statement correctly and those kind of things. Hopefully that's something we can have by early September. And I don't want to sign my life away, but if we can work it out.
Hopefully you'll be out of this by then.
Yeah, I didn't know you had injured yourself. So, all right then. If that is all the business before us, then I move we adjourn at 7:48 p.m. Everybody agree? Great.
We agree.
All right, sounds good. I will put Karen, I will put a note to myself in a week to revisit the letter thing so I don't forget it. I'm having my kitchen remodeled, so my life is really up in the air right now. If I don't make a reminder, it doesn't happen. So
I took notes this time about it. So.
All right, well then, that being the case, I will see most of you in 3 months.
Or at the dedication on the 13th.
On the 13th. That's true. So thank you all for being here, and we will see you all later.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, now if I can leave the meeting. There we go.
Yes, I'm trying to close the.
Leave me.